Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Scale Your Financial Operations Capabilities with AP Automation Using Tipalti. My name is Gary Dehart. I'm the publisher of Insightful Accountant and your man behind the scenes for today's event. Before I introduce our speaker, I do have a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, nominations for our Top 100 Pro Advisor Awards program closes at midnight on Friday. I will put the link in the chat. Number two, this is not a CPE eligible webinar. Number three, if you have questions, put them in the chat or in the Q&A panel and we'll try to get to them either during or at the end of the event. Number four, everyone will receive an email with the recording link. And number five, there is a presentation, the presentation will be in the chat as soon as I finish doing what I'm doing here. And number six, a repeat of number one, this is not CPE eligible. So our speaker today is Liz Scott, and in addition to being super knowledgeable and a genuinely nice person, Liz is the CEO of Accounting Lifeline, co-host of the Happy Hour, Insightful Accountant's QBO contributing editor, Intuit Advanced Certified QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor. She's a member of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network, an international speaker and trainer and host of Insightful Accountant's QB Talks monthly webinar series covering QuickBooks and the QuickBooks ecosystem. Thank you for joining us, those of you who have logged in, and thank you for joining us, Liz. It is all yours.
Gary, thank you so much. It's great to be here with everyone. I was sharing with Gary earlier that I'm in Oklahoma. I'm not sure where everyone else is located, but we are having storms today. So I'm going to go ahead and say hi and wave to everyone and then take my video off just to make sure that I have enough bandwidth to present the webinar. Feels like I want to prioritize. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop my camera, but I'll wave one more time. Well, today we're going to be talking about accounts payable. But before we get into accounts payable and being able to utilize Tipalti, because I want to be able to show you some working slides of how Tipalti fits into the AP system, then I want to first go through, when do you implement change? And so thinking about change means that you really want to plan, you want to take steps that are working towards the goal. And we're going to go through several different topics whenever you're thinking about change. And then we're going to go through some benchmarks. So what do you look out for? And then what do you do if you see these warning signs? And then we're going to talk about the accounts payable. So how would you implement change for your accounts payable department? What would that look like? And then what are some of the features about Tipalti that make it stand out? So the first place to start is to talk about change. Many of you here are like myself. You've got some clients that you help. So we're a practitioner and we help clients that have QuickBooks online. We work with the QuickBooks ecosystem. So whenever I'm thinking about a solution for our clients, I really want to drive them towards the QuickBooks ecosystem apps. And being able to create a department utilizing apps is going to give them more options. But how do you know if it's the right time to change? And one of the things I would say is, yes, beginning of the year is a great time to start new habits, but you want to make sure that you're not beginning in a place that has some burnout. So, we're thinking about January right now. Yay, we have made it past the 1099 and W-2 point for most of us. Everybody who's on time, those clients that are stragglers, they're going to be there. They just are. But really being able to think about what is the capacity of your team and is this a moment to be able to implement change? One of the things that I look for is, are the workers, are they burned out? Have they been going through piles and piles of bills? Have they been going through several different stages in their process and they have reached a maximum capacity? And so now they need either to hire help or put in a solution to be able to assist and take off some of that burden. There are a lot of different ways that you can help, but the first thing that you want to do is you want to think about these people who have reached their capacity inside of that position. How do we help those people? And the other thing that I want to call out is whenever I'm looking at the statistics of business closures, one of the things that affects this statistic is the inability to pivot whenever there's growth. So you've got to be able to adapt, because whenever you are a smaller firm, whenever you are a smaller business, you are not going to have the same issues as whenever you're larger. Or if they are similar issues, they're going to compound. So you're going to have a much bigger problem whenever you are reaching a growth phase and you want to be able to continue that growth. So it's really important to note that even profitable businesses fail, and part of it is that they haven't capitalized on the resources, so they haven't put the resources that are available to the best use. I am a huge Les McCowan fan. So those of you who have been fortunate enough to be able to see him live, I get to raise my hand. You can't see me, but I'm raising my hand. I absolutely was blown away by his thought process in going through the stages of business. And one of the things that he talked about was trying to get to this middle point, this predictable success. And the way that he talks about doing it is you're looking at what are the things that you need to do, have to do, and then how can you create some routines with those so that way it's sustainable. And you want to be able to predict that you're going to have success. And so where I see a lot of clients is in this whitewater phase. And Les explains this whitewater phase as a place whenever you have lots of fun happening, you're getting lots of clients and everybody's willing to put in a gajillion hours. Well, that ends because there's a turmoil that happens where you have workers that they don't want to continue to put in 40, 50, 60 hours. Instead, they want to be able to spend time with their loved ones, and you've got to come up with a better way in order to take those resources of those good workers and implement some type of solution so that way it's sustainable. The other piece of this is treadmill. So if you're on the other phase of this predictable success, you're getting to the point where you've got, I would say sometimes this is older businesses who they get stuck in their ways and they forget that they need to go back and they need to look at what's on the market. They need to maybe reprioritize their resources. So just because they've been doing it for a long time doesn't mean that that's the right way now. So being able to get into that predictable success means that there's a couple of things that you need to be able to look at in order to be successful in that area. Business planning. I really enjoy looking at businesses and thinking about their business plans. This is an area that a lot of times whenever I'm stepping into even these mid-sized level companies, they've been doing things for so long, or they've wound up in a point that they didn't expect. And so the business plan has been long forgotten about. And being able to go back to it means you really want to be able to have a solid and realistic idea of what the achievable goals are and how do you meet those goals. So, going through problems and solutions, being able to figure out and maybe doing some research and then some surveys and planning in order to be able to figure out what's the best way forward for this business. The other thing that I see whenever I'm thinking about change is that there's too little financing. So if you're working with a business and they're profitable, but there's not enough financing, one of the things you want to do is you want to think about what is the current AP, what is their current AR, because they may need to be in a position that they need to ask for some lending. And so if they're always backlogged, these numbers are going to be inaccurate and they're going to have a harder time being able to find the financing that they need. Expanding too fast. This is really that place where we were talking about, you can be an established business, you can be a new business, but knowing that there's going to be growth, knowing that there's going to be business expansion, you need to also think about how are you going to handle it? What's the priorities there? And again, make this plan of what are you going to attack first? What's the main focus of each of the departments? Maybe you've got each department and they've got an agenda, a goal. And so you want to outline those because you will reach a point that you have an internal resource cap. You're going to have people who do reach this burnout stage and they just don't have the ability to continue on. So being able to think about a solution and implementing that means that you're going to be able to have more options moving forward. So if you're utilizing the resources that you have to your fullest ability, that means automation. I'm going to say I really haven't seen a whole lot of growth scenarios where there wasn't some type of automation that was put in place, some type of best practices. This is the way that we do things. I think it's fun to go through, and one of the ways that I start this process whenever I'm thinking about a new client is I'll go through and I'll take the team, and we do this virtually now, and we'll be on a Zoom call, and I'll have all of the players from the department with me, and together we go through what are the actual processes. We do it with sticky notes. It doesn't have to be fancy. And so there's virtual sticky notes out there if you want to be able to share those back and forth. But being able to say, what is the job that these people are performing, and being able to then identify, once you have the job outlined, how some automation can be put into place. The other thing that happens whenever we're going through this scenario where everybody's sharing what they're doing is we're able to find, are there any weird routing of tasks that need to be rethought? So for example, whenever I'm thinking about AP, is there somebody whose job it is to open the mail? And is that the right person to open the mail? Because does the mail get stuck on their desk? So if the mail is coming to the owner and the owner's not opening it very timely, okay, that's going to push back the department's ability to pay and process bills. So being able to redirect some of those mail opening to somebody else is going to speed along the process. So going to remove that bottleneck. The other thing that can happen is you've got somebody who could be emailing it to the wrong place. So going and identifying where are all of these different bills coming in. And it's not just bills, y'all. It's other areas of the business. But being able to figure out who is doing what tasks and are they the right person to be doing it? Or, which is very common, did the business need to hire because they were at capacity? They plugged in a new person and they said, here's all the tasks that we want you to do. And they didn't stop to consider what are the other people in that department doing, and are they creating some bottlenecks? Because instead of having a very smooth, streamlined process, instead they've got this back and forth jerkiness of one person may be doing the reviewing of the emailed bills, somebody else is importing the bills. And so instead, maybe that needs to be one email box that all AP mail is coming to, or you could use this for any type of scenario. AR, AP, both of those, they have high volume. So anything that there's a lot of volume, that's whenever I'm thinking about who all is involved, and it's more than one person typically, and are they the right person? And there's even, there's some cool mail services out there that you can create a virtual PO box. You don't have to have snail mail. You can actually have the PO box and it will scan the email, the mail for you, and put it into a dashboard where you can view the mail. So adjusting. This is one of those areas where you've got to think about all of the people that are involved, and you've got to create some wins. So being able to implement some type of change means that you need to make sure that the people are prepared for adjusting. And most of the time, if you tell them what's in it for me, and so you say, this is going to free up time to be able to have the hour lunch that you want, then they're going to be more on board. If you say, okay, well, I'm removing this step because so-and-so has been doing, and it really doesn't make sense. Well, then that's going to redirect those people to be able to have all of the tools that they need. So whether that is mail that's coming in, email that's coming in, they want to be able to see all of their tasks. So change management, I don't think that this is talked about enough. Change management really is part of our jobs. So if we're talking to our clients and they are going through any type of growth, or if they're going through any type of implementation of a solution, this is a place that we really need to spend some time in talking about. It is a reality that not everybody inside of the business is going to be excited for change. You're going to have to point out what is in it for them. And to be able to point out what is it in it for them, because you want those wins, you want those people on your side, you're going to have to understand what it is that their job functions are. And so you can't appeal to that person unless you're targeting their pain points. And being able to have these sticky notes allows you to be able to identify what their job tasks are. If you're somebody who likes to write job descriptions, well, this is an opportunity here, because I can tell you there's tons of businesses out there who have never stopped to create a job description. So again, they had a need, everybody was at maximum capacity and everybody was working too many hours. And so the business just plugged in another person without stopping to say, what should that title be? And what are the tasks that are associated with that? And so being able to hand over a job description to a new hire or an existing hire actually is very reassuring, because there's a lot of people who, just like us, we're very task driven. I like my checklist. And if I don't know what's on my checklist, I feel chaotic. So, that's not just us. This is a lot of people. If they're not able to understand what they should be doing, how are they going to do it? So I really do. I start with those sticky notes, and the place that I begin is I get everybody, let's just say from a department, all gathered around in Zoom, and I'll ask the owner, I'll ask the department manager, what is it that they think the people are doing? And I'll document that. But then I go and I ask the workers, what are they really doing? Because there's usually two different stories there. And inside of what the manager or owner thinks is the process, there's usually steps that are forgotten. So going to your workers and asking them what they're doing is going to fill in these blanks. What are the job duties? What are the actual tasks? And what's the hierarchy of ordering? So once I have all of those sticky notes, that's whenever I start to put them in some type of order. Which is the most important? Which things should you be doing first? And then sometimes we're able to actually eliminate some tasks that shouldn't be on their to-do list, or that they're archaic. They've just been around and they're doing it because they're a more well-established business and been in business for a longer period of time. And so those tasks maybe used to be necessary, but now no longer. For example, here's a good one. Somebody prints out a copy of the bill and then puts it inside of the folder that's labeled that vendor. So that way they always have a paper copy. Oh, well, that's just not really necessary anymore. Everybody should have digital file storage. I think that, thankfully, there's some good things that came out of the pandemic. And one of them is that people understand virtual now. And so the benefit of that. So even if that's, one of the things that you're trying to implement with the business, Office has got the free file storage. So if there's somebody who's already utilizing Office, well, then that would be a free change, but you still need to make a plan for it. You need to think about who all that's going to affect, and then how are you going to be able to sustain that change? The other piece of this is training. So I would also figure out, whenever you're thinking about assessing the change, this is where I was talking about the sticky notes, preparing for change. So this is, going through and evaluating all of those sticky notes, all of the job duties and the descriptions, and then making a plan for being able to say what should change, and then making sure that everybody is aware of how this is going to benefit them. So really, what's in it for them? And then going through the implementing of the change, whose job is this? Is this a solution that you're going to incorporate? And do you have some hand holding from the solution because they're going to help you onboard it? Or are you the person who is going to be the implementer? You're going to be the trainer. You're going to be the one who is ultimately responsible for success or not. So if you're in charge of implementing, you want to know right away, and you want to be able to price for that, because there's some solutions out there that are larger than others, and you want to correctly bill. And then the sustaining the change. This is where I think that a lot of people don't take into consideration the amount of time that it actually takes to change. So you've got habits they've been going on for a while, and being able to say, I want to change is not the same thing as changing. And so if you're creating a scenario where you've got, you're driving the timeline, and you're asking for everybody to show up to training on Monday, and then on Wednesday, you're talking again about what you reviewed on Monday. People need to have several times that they're hearing and seeing and maybe actively doing the pieces that are going to change in order for them to be able to grab hold of it. So I wouldn't shortchange how long it actually takes to adopt this new change that you're putting into practice. And that's whenever you can have success is, did everybody convert over? And does everybody understand? Does everybody at least understand enough to be able to perform their job? So one of the fails is not allowing enough time to implement and sustain this change, and driving straight over to, look, we have success, whenever truly you have some people who are lagging behind. So whenever I'm thinking about pivoting, this is where, the pandemic is a great example of it. These people who were stuck in the paper world, and they are these larger businesses, they really had a hard time because not all of the employees were able to make it into the office. Still today, there are businesses that are not going to go back into the office full time. They might have some rotating days. But what I have seen is some of my larger clients who have taken the time to buy and invest in the workstations for home, some simple desks, some laptops, a second monitor, all of this was something that they didn't expect. And so they've invested in this change. And so being able to stay virtual is something they want to continue to do, because now they're not having to pay office rent and go back, because they've invested high dollars in these computers. Whenever you're thinking about critical benchmarks, this is whenever you start planning what is the agenda for maybe even the next quarter or for the year. So as you're understanding your client more, as you start to understand the life cycle of their business, then you're able to say, okay, I'm ready to make a plan for when would it be a good time to implement these changes. So the crossroads, you get into this point of you've got to make a decision. Are you moving ahead, or are you staying status quo and knowing that that might age out? A really good example is churches do this all the time. They fail to realize that they need to pivot. And so nonprofits can be very much stuck in this routine of this is how we've always done it. And instead of being able to pivot, they're then in that slow declining death rattle that happens. So being able to be aware that you've got a plan going forward. And if we go back to the Predictable Success, and that's a really great book. There's some webinars, there's some training that you can even hop into for that to learn more. But whenever we're thinking about that growth piece, it can be in that early stage of a business, or it can be in the later stage of a business. And so being able to understand that you've met the crossroads and you've hit the wall, people are not going to be able to work and continue to work 50, 60-hour weeks. They will burn out. So that is a reality that as you're talking to these individuals that are doing the tasks, I mean, maybe this is even happening inside of your own firms. You've got people or yourself who have been working endless hours. I get it. January is a bad time to say that, but because that's kind of our reality in our world. But identifying when is the right time and being able to also, come to terms with you can't sustain an environment where you're overworking the people. High volume invoices. So in our world of AP, I call these bills. They come in, yes, as invoices, but I call them bills because they're bills to be paid. And in these scenarios, if you've got high volume, that's difficult to process. So it's really common for an AP clerk to have a stack of bills that need to be entered, and that needs to be done on a regular basis. Whenever I'm working with a business who has a ton of paper and they've got an AP clerk who is entering in these bills, one of the things that we talk about is being able to scan in those bills and then have some type of OCR ability. QuickBooks Online has got it. Tipalti's got it. There's a lot of solutions out there who've got the OCR ability to be able to look at the data that's on that bill and to pull off the date, to pull off even the due date, to pull off what's the total, and even what the business name is. And after some routine, then there starts to be able to make some predictions as to maybe what the categorization of that bill is. So the manual data piece, this is a dying job. I mean, it really is. There's so much available to us to be able to move away from manual tasks that, being able to look at the resources that are available and to look at all of the solutions that are available. You want to start small, QuickBooks Online, you can take a picture of a receipt, you can scan in a receipt, you can email it, whatever. You can do different things to test that environment to see how well it works. Of course, that's a free service, so it's maybe not going to always catch all of the details that are on that bill, but at least get familiar with what OCR is and being able to understand that you don't have to input all of this data manually. You don't have to put in hours and hours of labor to be able to come to the same outcome that you need to pay these bills. And there's, of course, errors that happen with humans, and we get tired and, the phone rings if you're in charge of multiple tasks. Cash flow visibility. So transparency inside of a business. This is critical for not only a business who is in growth mode, but I would say businesses in general. They need to understand how are they going to be able to pay the upcoming liabilities. So whether that's payroll or sales tax or accounts payable, all of those are areas that money is going out of the business. And the more transparency that there is, the better off the business is going to be able to plan ahead. So, whenever you're going through and you're looking and identifying all of the tasks that these various people have, maybe one of the jobs that is replaced, so no longer they're doing the manual task, now the job is replaced by saying, okay, let's pull a cash flow report every week to be able to identify, do we need to structure our payments and stagger them? And if you have all of your bills inside of your accounts payable solution, that's going to be a place that you can go through and you can look to see what is the future ahead for us. Do we have bills that have terms of due on receipt, 10 days, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? There's another piece of it too. Sometimes these vendors will give you a discount if you early pay. Well, that's an incentive right there. So if you're doing manual entry, that's going to be one of the areas that often is missed. It's just like, oh, I need to get in the basic pieces of information, and they skip that sometimes there's terms on there that allow you to have discounts. Those discounts can add up. 2% to 5%, those are big dollar amounts that can add up. whenever we're thinking about the people inside of the business. So yes, you're going to reach a point in growth, and we're really talking about some of these larger businesses. So they have an AP department and they've got lots of bills that they're processing, and they hit that wall of we can't do it any longer with the team that we have. Then what do? You have to choose, am I going to hire or are we going to put in a solution? And here again, if your plan is to pull in a solution, then you want to be able to start creating a plan and making sure that you understand all of the duties, making sure that the solution that you're implementing works along the workflow that you have for that business. So understanding the details, we're detail people anyway, but the more details that you understand, the better off you're going to be whenever it comes time to show the solution and then reach that success point. Heavier workload, acquisitions happen. So if you're in a scenario where, I've got clients right now just this week that have sold and bought other companies, and those acquisitions mean that there's more work. If you've got a scenario where you've got an AP solution or you've got a system, it's really easy to adapt to that growth. And so in these cases where the acquisition happened and they're going to bring on this new work, they've already got processes in place to be able to say, yes, there's more workload here. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to be spending more hours doing the job. If we're using some automation, then that should take over some of the tasks at the volume. This is another area, past due. I was talking a minute ago about being able to capture the discounts that are offered a lot of times whenever businesses have terms. The flip side to that is past due. So past due credit card, past due bills, past due credit accounts, all of those can have fees, and the fees rack up. So if you've got 10 bills that are past due, you could have, somewhere around a couple of $100 in past due fees that might be your money right there in order to be able to pay for a solution. So identifying what's happening and understanding what the process is, where opportunities are to be able to plug in solutions, then helps you to be able to justify the cost. So in this scenario, if you know that there's past due bills and you know that there's penalties incurred, that makes implementing a solution and justifying the price really easy. And then being able to say, okay, now we've got this system, this is how we do things, and then be able to take that workload over. I'm going to say that this is a great time for a poll. So Gary, do you mind launching that poll for us? It doesn't look like I have the ability to launch a poll. So.
You want one in particular, Liz?
Oh, this was a, do you currently look, are you looking for, do you currently look to grow your business? So that was the poll. I'm wondering if it just didn't get over to you. It's possible.
It did. I do have one. I've got here. Let's run this one.
Sure, that'd be great.
So it's a little more generic. It's, do you work with your clients on AP?
You know what? That's just fine, because that's exactly what we're talking about today is AP. Mm-hmm. I'll give everybody a chance to answer that. And then I would say, Gary, the other thing we want to do is be able to ask at the end if they want to be contacted.
Yeah, and that I do have. I've got one other one too. We'll close this one down in like 3 more seconds here.
Perfect.
And we'll end that. And then I do have one other poll that, in addition to the one you just mentioned, let's see, and it reads.
How about you'll tell me whenever we hit that slide.
Actually, okay.
Okay.
Keep rolling.
We'll just roll on through it and then get there when we get there. So thank you. So steps to scale your accounts payable department. Whenever we're going to be going through this next piece, this is really important for creating that buy-in. So does everybody agree? Here's those sticky notes that I was talking about. Does everybody agree in the management and inside of the workers that this is the best plan forward? Does everybody feel like they're being heard? And so sometimes you have these people who are really, really quiet, which is why I like the sticky notes, because they don't have to speak out, because, we go to these meetings and sometimes over and over again, it's the same people who talk. And everybody who knows those people, they know their voice is going to be heard. But what about some of those others? So in the sticky note scenario, it doesn't matter if it's somebody who's more reserved or outgoing, you're going to be able to get the information that you need to understand what their job is. And this is a really great scenario up here at the top where they've got their sticky notes listed and they're all in a row. And then the rest of them are all over the place, so a little chaotic. Maybe what they've identified is here's the tasks that they need to do. And then what are all of the subtasks that are included inside of that task? So we know that, even if you scan in bills, there's still that piece to make sure that you go in and review it and have, your own eyeballs to make sure that categorization is done. So if there's a step that is missing, then you're going to forget to do that or to assign that or add that into that job description. When we're thinking about the payroll solution, one of the areas that we've been focusing on is automation. And this is a statistic that what Tipalti shared, and this comes through in a buy-in scenario. So whenever you're talking to management, whenever you're talking to owners, and you're trying to help them understand why to implement a solution, one of the things that you need to appeal to is in those manager, because they might have more costs associated with the solution, or owner, is to help them understand what is the value of what you're doing. So being able to understand where the dollars are going. So solutions might look like they're expensive whenever you're thinking about the monthly fee, but whenever you compare them to the hourly wage of the people who are actually performing the tasks, that's whenever you start to see the savings. And the other piece of it is being able to point out discounts or being able to point out the savings on the penalties. So visibility, that's going to help you with sustainability and then being able to scale. So visibility, this is the part where we're talking about putting in all of the bills in this scenario, and then being able to say, I can pull an AP report and I know that what's due on which timeline. So you might pull a report that tells you by terms. So 30, 60, 90 days, being able to understand what all is due right away. And then you can take that and pair that up with, you sure don't want sales tax and payroll and AP to all fall on the same date or within the same date range if you've got any type of cash flow issues. So understanding the business's cash flow is really important for sustainability. And this is where you come through and you say, okay, you might have a business that's in growth mode, or you might have a business that really needs to think about lending. And in those cases, the areas that are really important is reports. So making sure that the books are as accurate as possible is definitely going to aid. Tipalti has this really nice ROI calculator, and so it's built directly into their website, and you can plug in the volume of work, and then you can plug in some of the productivity, and then you can see what's the savings on payroll. So that's kind of a cool thing to be able to go and test out. And it's directly on their website, so that way you can show the ROI calculator. I don't know if that's something that you would want to show to a client if you were talking about implementing a solution for the client on their behalf. This would be a selling feature. This would be a help to comprehend feature to understand, again, that buy-in piece. So how do you do it? So if you understand that now I've got all of these pieces and I've looked at my workers and I understand all of the tasks that they're performing and I get their job descriptions, and now I understand where things should be moved around and we've got great buy-in, how do you implement that change? And so roadmap. I'm big on creating timelines. So whenever I'm implementing a solution, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to send out calendar invites for the entire project. And it's going to be dated and it's going to be labeled. What is it that we expect to accomplish on those dates? And what that helps with is if you've got somebody who's going to be out of office or vacation or didn't tell you or out sick, you're able to adjust your roadmap and have an explanation as to why that happened. It also helps to celebrate goals. So if we have a deadline, it's on the calendar, and this is the thing that we're going to work on, and we achieve it, then I also want to send out a celebratory message that says you did it. Being able to encourage your people means that they're going to have more interest in continuing because you've showed them, hey, it's not as hard as maybe what you thought. You already have some success, and just a little bitty celebration message, a little email that goes across. That is big whenever you've got new scary stuff that comes your way. Bottlenecks, here again, I think that these are often, they're owners, they're managers. They're the people who really want to be in charge of the tasks, and they get in their own way. So understanding what it is that the managers are doing or the owners are doing, that really does help to create some clarity as to, are these people who are leads, are they holding up some of the tasks? And do you need to pivot and to have them maybe move over into more of a review status instead of being part of the early beginning stages? Thinking about what tools you want to use and what's the workflow, here's where I start thinking about a solution. So my tools are my solutions, so my apps, and I look at those apps because now I have a really good understanding of the business. I can then go through and look at the workflow of that app and make sure that it fits my client. Because there's nothing worse than going through all of the change, making sure that you have this roadmap, and then doing part of the work to realize that, the workflow doesn't work. So whenever you're implementing any solution, you want to look at that solution, pay attention to the features. Does it hit your client's must-haves? Does it hit your client's like to have? And so those are sometimes little bonus features that they get excited about. And then making sure that you understand the workflow. So when you plug in a solution, you don't instantly have a fail. It's a lot of work to be able to implement a solution, especially whenever you're talking about a larger business. One of the things that I do is I document along the way. There's some really great documentation tools out there. Scribe How is a really good one if you're thinking about, how do I go through with a worker, and how, if they've never documented their process before, how do you do that? Used to, I would write a little note because they would tell me, and then I would take a screenshot, and then I would build this PowerPoint to be able to provide to them. Now I use Scribe How, and it's a really good solution that speeds up the process of creating the workflow because it's based off of images whenever you click or tab. So documenting. That means that then you can cross-train. So if you have somebody who is in a leadership position and they've been there for a while, sometimes those people are the ones who don't get to take a break. And the people who are on that same team, they're often saying, can you give me more work? And so creating these cross-training scenarios is a win for everybody, because these people who have been doing for so long and maybe too much, they're able to then delegate. And then the other piece of this too is the cross-training allows for, if you have a team member who leaves, or if you have a team member who comes on board, There's going to be somebody there who understands the job and is going to be able to take them through maybe the paper job description task and help to fill in the blanks of how do you actually perform the job. So there's lots of reasons why cross-training is a huge benefit to any business. I would even say those of you who are practitioners and you have your own firm, this is a big piece of it too. So you want to make sure that you're cross-training your own workers. Do they understand all of the tasks that are involved in taking care of a client? Do they understand some of the tasks that we forget to include? So when you're cross-training, that really brings to light that there might have been a misstep. So if somebody else can go through and they can follow the process or they can follow the job description and go through and do all of the tasks, then you know you've got a successfully documented workflow. So struggle is real whenever you're talking about adapting. And adapting often means survival. So being able to get out of these positions where mail is going to a location that's hard to get to. So maybe that means a virtual mailbox. There's some out there. Whenever you're thinking about a larger firm, they're really not that expensive. And it allows for you to be able to then have documents shared in a folder structure that everyone can see. Being able to have virtual communication. This has been an area where a lot of us have seen our clients change. So whether you're using Slack or Teams or, all of the other gajillion apps that are out there, it really doesn't matter. It's just being able to track that conversation and, moving away from text. That's one area that I've seen businesses, even that are large, that have needed to go remote. Having text, that is not secure, and it's going to create a scenario where you can lose part of the communication. Often people go through their text and they delete messages. They need to clear up space on their phone, or they're storing those messages forever, which you don't want that either. And nobody else who's outside of that thread is able to see the communication. So moving to some type of virtual communication, whether that's Slack or whatever, means that you can create environments where you can store the activity. You can also share folders and files easier. And then you've got access to the documents that are needed. So this is where you need to have somebody who's in leadership. Whoever the person is that's taking on that role of leadership, they need time to digest what the path forward is going to be. And they need some time to be able to actually go through it. So oftentimes, you might work with one particular person and then help them to understand what the training is, what the pathway is forward. And then they're able to, on a regular basis, because as an outside consultant, maybe your job is to teach them, but you're not going to be there 24/7 to be able to answer all questions. So if you've got somebody who's in that delegated leadership position, then they're able to oftentimes help to answer questions. And this also creates a scenario where confidence is built. If these people are able to answer some of these questions, they feel encouraged to be able to adopt that solution and move forward with it. So a lot of what we've been covering is change management. How do you know when it's time to change? And we've been talking about accounts payable. And so what I want to do from this point forward is I really want to go talk about the solution and what is the task and what does the solution look like. So side by side, understanding if you're using, so I'm gonna go through Tipalti here. So if you're using Tipalti and you're at these different tasks, what does the product look like? So vendor onboarding, there is a feature that's built into Tipalti, and it sends out an invite to that vendor to self-onboard. And the reason that self-onboarding is so important is it allows for that vendor to be able to put in their own information. So I had a scenario the other day. It was Tipalti, actually. And what had happened is they went to go add in their vendor name, and then they got to the point where it says W-9, and the W-9 information was not the same thing as what they had put in as their vendor contact. How many times do we see that? And at 1099 time, it's a pain. And so what Tipalti does is it actually stops them from being able to go to the next piece where they can put in how do they want to be paid if they haven't finished the vendor setup. So if the W-9 says one thing and the vendor contact says something else, it's going to make them go back and to put in the consistent name. You can have a DBA, you can have some type of other name that they're called, a display name, but for 1099 purposes, you want to have the name matched. So Tipalti is also going to do the 10 matching against the IRS to confirm that that is a good vendor. And that creates at year end an easier solution for 1099 creation. When we're thinking about bill processing, so you want to be able to capture all of these bills in an automated type of way. So if that's a portal, there is a portal that's inside of Tipalti, so they can upload directly to the portal, or you can email, and that's going to ultimately end up inside of that portal. And then the OCR ability to be able to extract the data that's needed. The PO matching, that's really important for larger businesses who create POs and they have an expectation that maybe they're going to be ordering 50 parts and they're going to expect to be able to receive all 50 parts. If they receive 53 parts, Tipalti is going to actually notify them and have an alert. And then route approvals. So the routing of the approvals, this is where whenever cross-training comes into play, a lot of the tasks that were being performed by one person now can be shared. And so you've got this ability to, once the data is in, you could actually send off that bill for approval. You can do it in batch, you can do it on a particular day, and automatically it's going to send it over to the right person to be able to make the approvals. And then also you can schedule payments in batch. So let's look at what that looks like. Here is the uploading of a vendor bill. So you're able to, as the vendor, you've got your portal and you could actually import your bill directly there. So most people have got a virtual copy of their bill. So what it looks like is the vendor is logged in because they put in their own data. And so now they have their own login. And from that login, they have a dashboard and they can actually scan in their own bills. Why would they be incentivized to do this? Because they want to be paid. And the faster that the bill is entered, the faster they're going to get paid. So there are scenarios where the vendor gets trained that they're going to import their own bill because they want to be able to speed up the date of the payment. Reviewing the invoice. So this is that part where I was saying you can create some automation here. So the bill is entered, and once the bill is entered, then it can be sent to somebody for an approval. And here we've got this scenario where we've got Angie, Dave, and Sean. So maybe there are cases where all three need to sign. So it's a really high dollar bill, and you want to have multiple people who can sign off on it. You might want to create some alternatives here, or you might have rules that are in place that says, if it's department, in this case, engineering, then route this bill over to Dave. And so instead of going to Angie first, it's going to go straight over to Dave because he is the department manager for engineering. Lots of different ways to be able to also then approve the bill. You can do approvals from your browser, but the other piece that you can do is you actually can do approvals from your phone. And so this is a big one for a lot of people who want to be able to process the payments fast. Owners on the go, they can actually look at their phone and they can approve the bill right then, or they can make some edits. Scheduling the bill. So this is the next piece. So now that the bill is approved, then you can actually schedule payment, and you can still actually have an approver that is going to then approve the payment that's going to go out. So maybe there's a batched payment. You can have an approver of the payments that are going out. So multiple levels of approval. The various payment methods that are available inside of Tipalti, there's about 7 or 8 or 9 that are in there. And so of those, the business can then decide how would they like their vendors to pay them, or how would they like to pay their vendors. And then of that listing of payment methods, then the vendors can actually choose how would they like to receive the approved company's payment methods. So there's more flexibility and control over what happens. And then this is that batching. So with the batching that happens, you can see the status of the payment. You can see what the payment method was, an e-check, a wire transfer, an ACH, and it's okay that it all happens on the same day. So it does not have to be staggered because of the type of payment that it is, or because of the type of currency. Batched payments can all happen inside of one bundle, and there's a reconciliation report that you can download to be able to view that. So having this automation helps you with being able to scale. And these suppliers, 196 countries. So that's the call out here, is that you really can pay bills from anywhere and from any location. So browser, from phone, and knowing what accounts payable solution that you're using is going to help you whenever you're thinking about how is the solution going to talk to Tipalti. So bidirectional syncing, whenever we're thinking about vendors, is really important. And then pushing the payments over into QuickBooks or to your other accounting solution. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a great time for the poll.
All right.
So
I think this is the, yep, here we go.
oh, fantastic. So have you automated any components of yours or your client's AP process? And that's a great one, because this helps to identify, have you already started it? So yes, no, or in the process. I'm going to go ahead and count us down. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you. So being able to understand what Tipalti does versus some of the other accounts payable solutions, the biggest piece whenever you're utilizing a solution like Tipalti is the amount of volume that it's going to be able to handle. So knowing that it can handle multiple currencies, knowing that it can batch, it can handle multiple different payment methods, high volume. These are going to be the kinds of clients that you're going to look to reach out to Tipalti for. Tipalti also syncs with several different accounting solutions. So depending on what solution that you're using, you would want to make sure that Tipalti then can sync to that solution. 98% customer satisfaction rate. I mean, that's awesome. I'm going to go ahead and say at this time, can we go ahead and launch that last poll, which is, do our attendees want to have Tipalti reach out to them? This would be a great time to make sure that everybody who is interested is able to have access to Tipalti, and otherwise your information won't be shared. Tipalti has a nice demo that they can take you through. So this was slides, but they're going to be able to show you in your scenario what might be the biggest benefit to you, and answer those specific questions that you have for your client, or maybe you're a firm that processes AP for your clients, and so you're looking for a solution that can handle a lot of that volume. I'll go ahead and count us down. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Gary, for launching those polls and for having a successful webinar today. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for your time, and thank you everyone who showed up today. And we would like to just once again remind you that our nominations close for our top 100 Pro Advisor Awards program. They close midnight Friday, February the 4th. And if you want a little bit more information on Tipalti, Liz also has a video that she has posted on insightfulaccountant.com, and we have a deep dive on Tipalti on the site as well. Thank you all for your time. Liz, thank you for sharing. That was a tremendous amount of information you shared there. Thank you for doing that in a timely manner. And thank you everyone who showed up, spent an hour with us. Y'all have a great week.
Bye, everyone.